This video will serve as an assembly guide for my own design of the hidden blade from Assassin's Creed, along with some comments about putting it together that I think will help. For more info on the specifics of how this mechanism works, I'll be making another in-depth video which will break it down on a part-by-part basis. I'll segment the video so it's easy to get to the part you're after. Hopefully this will help somebody either put this one together or encourage them to design their own. It was a really fun project and I can't wait to make some improvements to it as time goes on. Before I start getting into the specifics of how it all goes together, how to put it together, I thought it'd just be important that I show you the part list and the required consumables such as the screws and the elastic bands, because I'm going to reference it multiple times throughout the video, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's going to make your life a lot harder. So just take a minute to pause the video, just have a look at all these parts and familiarise yourself with them. As well as the stuff shown here in this picture, I did actually also use a little bottle of Loctite superglue as well as some sprayable silicone lubricant, which I'll reference in the video.
First and foremost, any parts of this video that are recorded in real time, in real life, I apologise for the quality. I'm not, I've not done photography, I don't make videos, I am just using my phone, and I don't own a tripod, so apologies for how wobbly it might be like this, but it's the best I've got, so hopefully that's okay with you guys. In this design, there are a few bits that need sanding. Not all of it needs sanding. I've seen loads of designs where people have said you have to spend hours and hours and hours sanding it all. It's not necessary. In this design, you only need to sand these three bits here. And the bits you need to do are the case, this bit here, the slider, and the blade. And in the case, don't be intimidated by how much there is. The only bits you have to worry about being smooth is this part here, this part here, this part here, and the edges. So this bit here which runs along one side of the channel, and this bit here which runs along the other. And the reason for that is that the blade will run up this here, this way. So as you can imagine, if there's any kind of friction, this will slow down the blade. And anything that slows down the blade, in my experience, is a big no-no and will cause you headache and hours of pain. So that's all you need to do on the case. The next one, obviously, is the blade, and you just need to do the side up to where that little notch is on the left. Again, the side up to the notch, and then both of these faces. And that's it. And on this piece here, this is the slider. And this is what I'd call the top face, because this is the face that will face you as it's on your arm. The bit that needs sanding is actually this piece here. And that's it. So, now that you've got the sanding right on the blade, all you have to do now really, the last process you've got to do before you can start putting it together, is start tapping some holes. So, there are a few holes in the case. There's these 6 main ones which will hold the blade together. Then there's some on the back. These 2, there and there. And then you can pick really between which of these 3 ones you want to do. So the reason these exist is for some different tensions of elastic bands. This will become more obvious as I show you the assembly of the locks especially, but what I normally do is put a screw here, and a screw here, but I'll get more into that. So all I'm going to do is put you will see that the holes are actually a bit counterbored, and that's just so that you can push the screw in a little bit, like shown. Get your screwdriver. I'm using an electric one in this case just because I find it easier. I'm just going to start tapping these holes. And I'm going to systematically tap each one of those with the same screw just so you don't waste any threads or anything. I'm just going to tap each of these holes here. And then on the back, this one, the middle one, and the outer one. And I'll do a little jump cut once I've done that. Okay, just got done tapping all the holes that I spoke about, and I've put some screws in and I shall go through them now. So essentially, I've put the 3 screws in the back that I was talking about, and you'll notice that these 2 go in this way, in towards, and the one in the middle comes towards you. And how you know how to gauge that is the 2 screws, let it focus. Yep, okay, so the 2 screws that are facing up at the moment, they will sit just below the line of the case. You see that? And the reason for that is so that when the top cover goes on, it doesn't conflict with that. This one in the middle, focus, yep, sits just level or just below that little lip. And this is where some elastic bands are going to hoop around. That's why I said that these 2 here are for different thicknesses and different tensions. You'll have to experiment with the ones that you get, but if you buy the elastic bands that I've linked down in the description, you'll be able to do this in the middle no problem, and it'll work. So eventually this one in the back will be trimmed, but I find it's best to get the mechanism firing and actually working before you start messing around with that. So now that we've done that, the next thing to do is start putting our locks in and our hammers, and from there we can start trying to test out some of the mechanism. So I'll explain what that all does in a second. A few more bits in this shot than there were in the last one, and they include both of our locks, our blade clamp, 3 elastic bands, and our hammers. So the order that these go in are as follows. The first thing you're going to want to do is put some elastic bands around this little notch in the locks. So how I do that is I turn it over to the flat face, the one that doesn't have the slot in it, pinch an elastic band with my thumb and pull it around like this. Yeah, as you can see, it is a bit fiddly, and especially if you've got crap hands like I have, it's a bit of a pain in the arse. But essentially what's now going to happen is you're going to put that down. Doesn't matter if it pings up a little bit like this, we'll sort this out in a second. Going to repeat that step on the big one. So again, smooth face facing you when it focuses. Yep, smooth face, elastic band, pinch it with your thumb. Just make sure it goes between that little slot there. Pull it so it's tight like that, and just pull it again so you tighten it all. And that's the locks basically done. We'll put them in a second. The next thing you're going to want to do is, with your last elastic band, select a tension for your hammers. So if you buy the elastic bands that I've recommended, I find that it works best, it doesn't matter which side, but these little slots here are for different tensions of elastic band, because all elastic bands are different, and you'll find that the tension varies with whichever one you get. And with the elastic bands that I use, I find it works best if there's...
Just a quick side note that I noticed whilst I was editing. In the video I was saying how I use settings 2 and 3 on the hammers, but I later on found that it actually works a lot better if you just put them in the 3rd setting. So I've muted the video, just ignore what I was saying, and just put it in the 3rd slot for both hammers.
It's pretty simple really. Just thread one of them. So I'm going to do this one on number 2, like this. Let me focus the camera. Yep, that one on number 2. And then this one. This one's always a bit fiddlier because the elastic bands are so small. On number 3. Like so. Like this. And if you've done it right, they should be facing the same direction. Okay? So, now that that's done, we can put the locks in and the blade in. So, get the blade. First and foremost, just leave it there really quickly. You're going to want to put the little lock in first. The little one goes in the top, and you can see that because this area here is much smaller than this area here. And there is a reason for that, and I will go into that in a second. So what you're going to want to do is get a pencil or a pen or just something sharp, something long that you can hold the end of an elastic band with. So in this case I'm using a pencil. All I'm going to do is loop the end of the pencil around the elastic band like this. With the slot facing the inside, you're going to want to put the lock on that screw, stretch this all the way down, just try and loop it around that screw, like this, and get it to focus, like this. And the reason for the slot being on the inside is that when you let go of it, see how it wants to flick back this way round? That's the way you want, and you want to do that for both locks. So I'll do it again for the other one. So if we get a pencil, this might be a bit harder because I have to use my left hand here. So if I just put it that took an embarrassingly long time, so essentially now you should have 2 locks which do this, where they're both wrapped around the middle screw, or one screw in each of those other 2 holes, doesn't really matter, and this should be working like this, yeah? So, now what you're going to do is slide the blade in. So, first, hold the top lock, slide the blade in so this little notch is the same size as the locks. You want to just pull the top one back so the blade can slide past it. Once you've done that, it should be pretty easy. Just hold the back one, do that. As you can see, this lock here fits nicely into that little groove, and that is what stops the hidden blade from coming out. when it's not supposed to, and vice versa the other way. So this is going to want to pull into that slot there, and that's what stops it coming back. Okay, so what we're going to do now is push the blade all the way back. It's not stuck on something, that is. There we go. Right, okay. Right, so now my blade's back in. This piece here is called your blade clamp. And what this is going to do is just fit into this little notch right here. And that is majorly just to hold the blade down. I've seen designs where the top cover itself has this bit printed on the underside of it, but honestly, in my experience of 3D printing, that just means you've got more support material, which is more of a pain in the arse to get off than it's worth. So I've just made a separate piece that fits in here. Depending on the tolerance of your printer, you might want to sand it, but you see how mine's got like a little gap just between it and the blade. You can barely see some air between it. That's pretty much what you want, and all it's for is so the blade comes out. So if you can test it by pulling the back lock back, and if your blade still comes out, then it works. So let me put it back in. You can put the blade in with the blade clamp on. It doesn't really make a difference. Okay, so that's the majority of that done. For this next part, there's a few pieces you're going to need. So you're going to need the hammers from earlier that you sorted out with the elastic band. You're going to need your slider, which you've sanded by now. And you're going to need the top cover. It's worth noting that the top cover itself, on the underside, has a little lip. See that? That's just to give a bit of wiggle room so the mechanism isn't completely sandwiched. Because if it's sandwiched, there's too much pressure and friction. So, what you're going to do, first and foremost, is put the hammers in. So, they go this way round. Yeah, and see this little notch here? Well, that little nook here goes into that notch, like that. And then this one, just hold it back like this. And what you're going to want to do is take your slider. So you see how this cutout lines up with that one there? You're going to want to push that in. It's worth noting when you should do this to hold the blade. So what I find works is try and move it up and down like this. And you see how these locks start wiggling? Yeah, that's the easiest way to get it in. So push it all the way back. Let go of this lock, and it should snap into place like that. What you're going to want to do is just hopefully let go. It shouldn't move. The bits are thick enough so that they don't bend and will spring out. And the last part to put on is your top cover. So what you're going to do, just line up the holes. Should be fairly simple. And take 3 of your 6 screws that you're going to put in these holes here, and just put them in anywhere. I try and do like one here, one there and one there, just to hold it all together. But it doesn't really matter where, just as long as it's held down. You could even do it with elastic bands, but if you've gone through the effort of tapping the holes already, you might as well use them. So I'll put them in real quick and do a jump cut. And I've actually tested this off camera just to see what happens, and I'm quite glad actually that it doesn't work. Well, it kind of works, and I'll show you why. So how you can test this, I'd recommend doing this whenever you put it together. If ever you take it apart, put it back together, always test this before you put the top on, because if this bit's wrong, nothing else will work. So you've got to make sure this one works. So when I push this slot forward, the blade will come out, but as you can see, it doesn't. It stops sort of like here, at this point here, and that's a good thing really, because it's caused by friction. And the reason I know it's caused by friction is because if I just pull it all the way, see how that lock activates? It doesn't let the blade back. Right. The way I know it's friction is because the retraction works fine. So it's worth noting that if one way, retraction or extension, works, if one of them works and the other doesn't, it's nothing to do with the tension in the elastic band, and it's got everything to do with friction caused by travelling. You will 9 times out of 10 find that it's the extension that's the problem, and that's only because the blade has to go across more plastic this way initially than it does across this way, and so as it travels up the plastic here, it has more contact points with the plastic and more time to gain friction and slow it down. So the way to get around this is to just take it apart, sand some stuff, maybe lubricate it if you have to, and that's exactly what I'm going to do now. All that's left now is the trigger. Now this is the bit that there are many different methods to do, and as time goes on I'll probably develop a different one, but the most common one is what's known as Amon-Ra's wheel. You might have seen other YouTubers or people like I'm Deep Painting Reborn or raw ice do things like this with this wheel, and there's a reason for that. It's the simplest way. And I am actually going to be trying to develop a different one as time goes on, but for now this works and it will be good enough for people who just want to have a prop to play with. So in most cases these are normally printed as one part, but I've found that that doesn't work as well because I have to get a screw in here. Most people print like a little nib on the end of this here, on the underside of this disc, if you just focus the camera. Yep, but I find they break off, even if you print it at 100% infill, which this part is, they always break off. So instead what I do is I vouch for putting a screw down here and just filing it off. Like that. So all I've done since I cut away is I've put the screw in there. You can see the hole is counterboard so the screw sits roughly flat. It doesn't have to be perfectly flush with the top, but it basically sticks out here. And what you were going to do is just sort of guess, if I'm honest with you, just how far down it needs to go. So usually it has to be about, probably about 2.5mm, something like that. So in this instance here, I'm going to mark it about somewhere like, I wish the camera would focus, there we go, somewhere about here, and that's where I'm going to trim it down to. So I've done that, and as you can see now the screw is about 2.5mm long, something like that. And what this will in essence do is, as this screw turns, this will be broken down in the breakdown video, but as this screw turns, the slot will move up, and this is how you turn your circular motion into a linear motion, but I'll get into that. All it's got to do is sit into this slot here and not go much deeper than that. And so this just goes in here like that, and essentially as this turns it will shoot the blade out because the slot will move forward. I'll go through how the mechanics of this work in the breakdown video, but something that I'm noticing now is that this bit is actually not printed very well, and so it doesn't quite fit in the, oh it does, but ever so slightly, a little bit too big. So this part here I'd recommend you print at 100% infill, just because this thing has a tendency to break if it's less than 100%, but as of yet I've not had one break when it's been printed at 100%. So I guess that's the last thing I have to show you for just the basic case thing, and we can get rid of this now until we finish the top part. This is, believe it or not, actually the easy part of doing the whole thing. This is its housing, and the only parts that are critical on this is this slot here. Yours might be ever so slightly different because in a later design I got rid of this area up here because I found that this caused problems. Having this bit here is necessary, but the rest of it not really. Has a little hook which I can't really get a good angle on here, which an elastic band goes around. This little piece here, which the whole purpose of that is to, don't know if I can show you this properly. See how it bends a little bit? That's its whole purpose. That's what it's meant to do. And that's it pretty much. The rest is all just decoration. Because of this, I recommend printing it, if you imagine your bed is my hand, that way up. The only reason being that if you print it this way, you're going to have a load of support material to remove, and it's going to take hours to print, and getting it out of here is going to be a real nightmare. If you don't like that, of course, feel free to edit the model and just get rid of like these fins and that back piece and all that. But for the most part, yeah, this is going to be the easy part. So what we're going to do first is assemble the spindle. So all you've got to do is make sure the spindle's facing down and take this part like this and slide it over the square. That's it pretty much for this part. That's the only bit that you need to do there. From there, what you're going to do is put it face down into that hole with the screw facing you. So you see this bit here? This is the function of that little piece there. Stops it from turning too far back on itself here. And as it turns around, it will push it out of the way a bit, it will spring back, and then it will lock itself again. So that's the whole purpose of this. Screw facing down again. And what you're going to do is place the washer on top. Mine's a little bit rough on the surface, but it doesn't really matter. As long as you have one smooth face, that's fine. Put the smooth face against this. Just slot it over the little square there. And then you'll have what I've called Spartan shield. The only reason for that is because I like Greek mythology and I was going for like the Spartan theme that Odyssey has. This can be whatever it is, as long as it's got this little square cutout in it. Doesn't really matter. Hell, you could even do like a gear, or you could glue it. I've seen loads of people do gears. But essentially, just push this on, if I can get it lined up. There we go. Should give you like a nice satisfying click, and essentially you won't have to glue anything if you've done it right, and it will just sort of sit here like this. And the whole purpose of this is to rotate. So that's basically it. What you've got to do now is the string part, and this is the bit I couldn't find any information on any of the videos, how to measure the string. I could just give you the lengths of like where to make the knots and all that, but that doesn't help you learn anything, especially if you're using these videos to determine where to put it. What you're going to need is some string. I just cut an arbitrary length just to make a really long piece, because the more you have to work with, the more you can mess it up and work around it later. All you need is that, and another elastic band like the one you've used in the entire assembly so far. That's it pretty much. So what we're going to do is we're just going to thread the string through the elastic band. Let me get focus again. Through the elastic band, just make a simple knot, nothing too special. So we're just going to do this, like that. Nothing too special, it's literally just a knot. Any kind of knot will do, it will be fine. As long as the elastic band can do this and the string won't come out, it's fine. What I like to do now is just put a little bit of super glue where these two pieces connect, just so there's like less incentive for the knot to come undone. These elastic bands that I've been using throughout the entire thing are dental bands, and the reason I've been using dental bands is I find that regular elastic bands snap too easily, whereas these are quite good. That little elastic band can extend way beyond its resting state and not deform, which I find pretty good. So I'm going to apply some super glue to where these two little string bits meet, and once that's all glued together I will jump cut. Once the super glue is dried, just take the top housing, take the elastic band with the string now glued to it, and this little loop here just goes over that little hook in the case. This can be a bit fiddly to do, hopefully I can get it right first time. Oh, first time, nice. So as you can see now, this is the whole point of that little hook, so that the string can bend and stretch but be pulled back to its original position. And this is what's going to allow you to do dual action, where one action will make it come out and one action will make it go back. On this little spindle you have got a section that's ridged here, and that goes all the way round to the other side where there's one on the opposite end. And the reason for that is that here somewhere is going to be where you put a knot in the string, and as the string is pulled, that knot is going to get caught on that lip, and it's going to turn this with it. You might not have picked up on the camera, but that little pin moved back and has now locked it, so I can't actually easily turn this back the other way. And that doesn't stop, however, the string coming back with the elastic all the way back to the starting position, so your knot will end up here again. So the next action will turn and we'll then take it back. And that's the essence of how this works. So how do you know where the knots are? Most people just give you the measurements, but if you're using this video as like a tutorial of designing your own or trying to figure out the maths behind it, I find the best way to do this is to make one roughly where the lip is. I'd say a few millimeters back, so maybe somewhere like there, where I've dabbed the red there. And as tempting as it is, the other knot is to go into this slot somewhere. As tempting as it is, don't dot this before you've tied this, because it will just make your measurements out and you'll have to redo it and you'll have to undo your knots, and it's not worth doing. So I'm going to put a quick knot in there, then I'm going to loop it back round, and then I'll come back. I've done my first knot here. As you can see, it's just above that little ridge, which is actually pretty good for position. And now what you've got to do is put the string all the way through. Cut a really long piece here. See, there's a little hole in the end here. Well, this end of the string basically has to go through there. Just tie it like this. Okay, and when this is all resting, you want it to be something like this, where that little knot right there just sits a bit back from here, and the other knot is going to go somewhere in this channel. As I said, you won't have this little ridge here. I'm going to have to do this a few times because this is an older version here. I actually got rid of this because it causes problems, but don't worry about that. Your other knot is going to have to be somewhere around about here, just above this little ridge, and that's to stop it going back too far. You see, as the elastic band tries to pull it back, imagine there's a knot where that red dot is. It will stop it going any further than that, and subsequently stop it from going way too far back. So again, I'm going to pause it, make a knot, and then I'll come back. And you'll end up with something like this. We have one knot here, one knot here, and what will happen is that when you turn it once, the screw will end up here. When you turn it again, it'll end up at the bottom. And that is in principle how the hidden blade works. What I will end up doing and saying is that this works way better if you lubricate it. You don't have to sand it, don't bother taking it apart and doing everything. Just literally spray a bit of silicone on it and that'll be okay. So I'm going to go do that now, and then I'm not going to touch it other than... in fact, you know, I won't touch it, just so you can see it as like a raw state, and then I'll put it on the top of that case that we made and we'll see how it works. Now that you have both the blade assembly and the housing sub-assembly done, it's time to put it all together. So what I've changed on this since the last time we saw it is I've just put 2 screws in the bottom and nowhere else, and that's because these holes here line up with these 4 holes here, but these aren't used anywhere else, so we might as well fix this together. So what we're going to do is just simply, this may prove a little bit finicky because of my design choice, but essentially the little fins will go over. You may have to persuade them a little bit just by pulling them apart. Don't worry if you break them though, so it doesn't really matter. So it'll end up doing something like that, where it goes over, and all you are going to do is make sure that little gap there, try and make sure, there's not really an easy way to do it other than looking at the bottom. See how that little screw is in that notch? Just try and push it all together to make sure it all goes like this. So you should end up being able to see the screw here. Again, another good reason to have these cutouts in the back. And then all that's left to do is screw it together. So I'm going to do a jump cut real quick whilst I do that, and then we'll try it out and see if it works. I've added the screws on, and now let's do the test to see if it all works. So extension's good, retraction's good. As you can see, that bit spins down there, and the blade comes out. You can see the inner workings of it in the bottom to troubleshoot any problems you might have. That's pretty much it. One completed hidden blade. All you have to do now is take your ring, and essentially what you will do is tie the end of the string on at this sort of point here, so that you moving your finger like this is enough to pull the blade in and out. And that's pretty much it. One hidden blade done.